So hello everyone, welcome. My name's Lottie. I run an arts organisation called Clifftop Projects, which is based here in Scotland. And we run free artistic activities for anyone who doesn't usually have access to the arts. So we work primarily in areas of deprivation and poverty, but also with families and people with disabilities. And yeah, we're just really keen that everyone should have access to an arts education. And one of those groups that we run is an adult creative club, because lots of adults locally have told us it feels like artistic activities are just for young people, and it's really hard to find somewhere that you can be an adult and get creative. And one of those adult creative members had attended a workshop by Nadia, and asked that we get her involved. So it's fantastic to be hosting this today, and thank you for Natalie for recommending that we do. Um, so
Natalie.
I will be handing over to Nadia in a second. But for those of you that haven't met her before, Nadia is a poet and an author based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and has released I Say the Sky, a book of poems earlier this year. Alongside this, she is the founder of Align Your Story and teaches there. It's a school that brings together traditional writing techniques with mindfulness and embodied practices. So I'm really excited for the workshop we're going to do together for the next about hour and a half. Um, During that time, we might break into smaller groups, do chat amongst yourselves when we're in those groups and make some friends and connections. Um, Otherwise, we'll be in the big group together. We're aware that everyone is in their own homes and might have their own responsibilities. Maybe a dog's going to run through, maybe there's a grandchild that needs looking care of. So, yeah, look after yourself in your own space. And if you have any questions, please do message me in the chat. Uh, Otherwise, I'll hand over to you, Nadia, and let's get going.
Thank you. Thank you, Lottie, and thank you to Natalie for making this happen. And I'm really glad to be connected with Clifftop, and it seems like you're just doing really important work. And also, thank you all for being here. And this is actually a pretty nice small group, so um, we can even like unspotlight me later and just have more of a group conversation. And as Lottie said, we can break out into some um, breakout rooms later. I'd like this to be interactive, but my thought around this was, I say the sky, which maybe you can see like that. The poems in this book have as the backdrop, just the way we have as the backdrop, all of us, of our lives, the unfolding environmental and climate crisis. And as we pay attention to the world around us, it's, if we're awake, we're aware that a lot is changing, and a lot is endangered. And how do we respond to that? And I was just having a conversation with someone earlier today about how heavy this is for so many people and how it feels for many people like we just can't take anymore. We're at our limit. What we need to do is I just don't want to hear about it more, and I want to just kind of focus on my own little life, just so I don't get overwhelmed. That's like what I've had a lot of people tell me and kind of sense. I want to offer other kind of responses to what's happening so that we can feel that we have agency both over what we're taking in, um, the media that we're consuming, and also we have some agency in how we're responding. And part of that agency is creative agency, coming to, be empowered through writing our own work, tapping into that ability to regenerate and then also take action. And for me, so much of poetry is about noticing, being aware, and seeing connections. And to me, that practice of awareness is very similar, whether it's writing a poem or being mindful, a mindful meditation practice. Um, so, and from that, then we see the interbeing of all things, and also not just the devastation, but also the rebirth. And of course, it is spring now. I just went for a walk this morning and all the pussy willows are in bloom, and it's really beautiful, even though it's still cold here in Massachusetts. But to keep alive our uh, awareness, our visceral understanding of the potential for regeneration. So I'll talk more about that. But what I thought we would do is I thought I would share a few poems and then maybe offer a little meditation and writing prompt. And then after that, open it up to some conversation as a group, and then come and do a few more exercises, and then maybe have some smaller breakout rooms as well after a little while. But maybe I will start with just reading a few poems from the beginning of I Say the Sky. And before we do that, though, I'm going to invite the singing bowl, and I invite you to settle into your body, take a breath, relax, get comfortable, move a little if you want to, and just acknowledge this time is here for you. So welcome again. I'm going to read the first poem from I Say the Sky. I don't know how many of you have been in, readings or workshops with me before. I definitely recognize some of you. I know some of you are new to me, but I hope that even if you've heard this poem before, you'll hear something new in it. And it's the opening poem in the book, and it sets up in the first part of the book. I really feel like I set up a context. I set up the context of, where we place I place my individual life amid other people's lives, amid loss, but also amid a kind of sense of wonder, so that I'm holding both the suffering and also the miracle of the world at once, or trying to. And the title of the poem goes into the first line. I think it is such a beautiful dawn, and my mind, which wants to hold things as they are, cannot hold this morning, 1st of April, spring too early this year by 3 weeks. The daffodils of my city spurred forward by the warmth. Cannot hold Brett, gone, Patrizia, gone, not the marching clouds, not the sky that is perched unaltering above the clouds, not the methane leaks, not the whales suffering the piercing sounds of boats. I reach out my hands, one and then the other, spread my fingers as light falls through them. Upflying. Whole flocks of geese in my childhood hunking their way north, the streets dirty with pigeons, the sky blackened by starlings, each small pointed wing so close to another's it was just a blur. Now 3 billion birds are missing. We wake to so many forms of emptiness, so much loss greets us in our sleep. In my childhood, I thought the world I'd entered would be the one I'd exit. In the poplar, one grackle whistles, not to me. In that poem, I was thinking, among other things, of Keats's Ode to a Nightingale, where he's sitting there listening to the bird. And I actually reference Ode to a Nightingale in some other poems in the book as well. But I think about this long tradition of lyric poetry, which is in dialogue with the natural world. And poets have been very aware, especially in the Romantic period, of the relationship between the landscape, the exterior landscape, and the inner life. And and so I was really thinking about that. You know, there's a long tradition for poets to have that mirroring of inner and outer and in the natural world. And how does that shift as the natural world itself changes? Of course, I think that the Romantic poets, in part, were writing from the natural world, and I'm thinking of all those English Romantic poets, because they were seeing it changing. And so it was no longer something they could take for granted in exactly the same way. So it's not a completely new situation. But I think that even as they saw the skies get dirty, because it was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, and the waters get dirty, there was still a general sense that the natural world was unchanging. And that would always, the cycles of the natural world were unchangeable. Um, and that there was this kind of pure natural world that we could turn to in a poem as a kind of reminder of our true human nature. And I think that's still true, that, you know, the natural world is a place to remember who we are, but that relationship changes as we see, like, human induced species extinction. 3 billion birds are missing. So what's our relationship now with the birds? And I don't want to write poems that are kind of naive, like, oh, just here's this beautiful natural world that is unchanging, right? Like, I want my poems to acknowledge it. At the same time, I believe that our health can only exist if we have the health of the natural world. We're inter-are, and there's so much to learn from those natural rhythms and other beings. So this is partly what I'm navigating in my poems. And I'd kind of love to open that up to conversation in a few minutes, but I thought I'd maybe read another poem first. This poem is called The End of History. And I use the title maybe a little bit ironically. The End of History. History, I say, with its high ramparts, its engraved swords, I say the bees are falling from the skies. The apples will not come into bloom this year or next. The fish gorge themselves on plastic. Or I say the sky is blue today with nimbus clouds. I say the girl, her clothes ripped off, underneath the guard's heavy weight, is named Deborah. I say the child frozen at his mother's breast has stopped his cries. We must do something. I say the hawk sits in the high branches. I say the mother sits on the cold cement floor. I say yesterday I was full of fear, and today the sky is blue with nimbus clouds. We must act quickly. The world loves itself, falls into itself with open arms, devoured, devouring. So in that poem, I was really, let me put it this way. I didn't write these poems to teach something or to have answers. I wrote the poems primarily for myself from questions, and the poems became spaces to work out the question. And then sometimes, like, the posing of the question itself is almost a form of an answer. So for me, I think the question of this poem was, how do I come into acceptance with what's happening across so many different levels in the world? And I guess that's one thing I would thought maybe I could open up a little bit to questions, especially because this is a small group. What do you have thoughts about the relationship between poetry and a changing natural world? And because it's a small group, maybe what you could do is just like unmute yourself if you want, and respond, or you can also put it in the chat. or questions. How does living in this period of climate change, of species extinction, shift your own understanding of the natural world and also of the role of art or poetry? Anyone have, or if that's not an interesting question to you, do you have other questions about anything that, I've said so far, if you want? Okay. Maybe not.
I'm happy to start with a question, Nadia.
Mhm.
Well, I think what's interesting, yeah, poets have always had this relationship to nature. So for you personally, do you find like solace in going out and sitting in nature and that quiet and beauty, or can you sort of picture that also the terrifying future that awaits us? Uh yeah, even when you're sat with like beautiful flowers blooming and things like that.
Um, Lottie, are you able to mute people? Because I think someone, and I don't have control over
I've done
that.
it. Yeah, we're all good.
Okay, perfect. Um, so I guess I feel like as well, I think because I have a mindfulness practice, I think it's important not to live in the future. I
Mm.
think it's important that we are present. And I think that we don't know what the future holds. And I think that the experience of being human is that we, our mind projects out. We can worry about the future, but also we, we've always lived in a aware of our own mortality, aware of, danger. And in many ways, many of us are living with more security than people have lived with for a very long time, even though we live in a world with so much insecurity. So holding both the security and the insecurity, I think, is important to remember. Like, this is a human experience. Um, and for me, I just love going out and being in the natural world. It's one of the things I love the most. Um, and so it just feels like um, beautiful, invigorating, rejuvenating, like the water when you're really thirsty. All those experiences I think are just so important, and feed me as a person, and feed my soul, and feed my work. So I don't know if that perfectly answers your question, but I think it's important for us um, to use the space of poetry to celebrate as much as it is to mourn, to both of those things, and to use that space of poetry because I think that's our human work. And I have kids, so it's also really important to me to kind of be a voice of positive possibility. Um, so can we have hope for a better future where nature is nurtured and not devastated? I think that again, I think that it's our job as individuals, wherever we are, just to be living and acting in ways where we're showing up for the things that we want, that we believe in. And I'm going to put something in the chat. This is a group I'm really, really excited about. It's called Project Regeneration. I don't have anything to do with them, although I am actually interviewing the founder of that, Paul Hawken, next Friday. So if you are not already on my email list, please come to my email, or you can email me. No, actually, that's not my Nadia at nadiacolburn.com. And I can let you know more about that interview. But Project Regeneration is a whole organization that talks about the regenerative practices that people are doing now and that we can do to help regenerate the earth, to help regenerate grasslands, mangroves, the oceans, to take carbon out of the atmosphere and sink it back into the soil in really healthy ways. So there are so many things that are hopeful. And if we can use our energy to remind people of that and to say, hey, there are really amazing, beautiful, wonderful things we can build, which is what I hope that poetry and literature can be a space to hold our emotions and to put into language a possibility of, here's what I'm seeing, here's where I'm coming into acceptance, and then here's like a next step that I can do that's positive, that has some hope to it. You wonder how much impact creative responses have unless it's high profile. Well, I guess you could say the same thing of how much impact does a meditation practice have. But I believe that each of us has to kind of take care of ourselves. We are not going to be able to do good work in the world or be good citizens in our community or in our own ecosystem of our body if we're not in balance ourselves. And for me, creating art is partly about sharing it with others, but it's first about having that inner balance with myself, that I am alive, I am processing, I am creating something that's for me meaningful and beautiful in itself, that if I don't do that, I feel like I am shriveling. And so I don't do it as a propaganda to like, this is going to save the world. I do it for my soul, but then from my soul, I can share it with others and hope you can do what you need to do and then do other things to, again, each little tiny microcosm, if we can make it healthy within ourselves, within our community, within broader communities, I think that's really important. So Pamela, you say indoors sounds electronic, mechanical, walls, straight lines, light is man-made, out in nature, lively curves and smells, colors, sounds of nature feeds and nurture us, help us to heal, need to keep connecting and appreciating in our poems and music, drawings, etc. Exactly, it's like noticing those different qualities and keeping them alive. So maybe I'll read another poem or two and then offer a prompt for you, and then there'll be time also to discuss it more. This is a poem I wasn't actually planning to read, but it is related, I think, to what I was saying about the health of our own inner life and the health of our outer communities, our human communities and our natural communities, and that interconnection. So at the beginning of this book, I kind of place myself in the context with the background, as I said, of the climate crisis, the environmental crisis, loss, but that journey of looking and awareness and of attention brought me back into my own body and into my own story. And I needed to heal that own story in order then to go back out and interact in the world in a way that for me was healing, that I hope brings healing to others. So this poem is called Memory. And if you read the middle section of the book, it's about going back and healing from childhood trauma. So, memory. The self carries with it a little self, and within that, smaller selves, little boxes within boxes of the self, and within that, the wild blossoms of the wild rose along the path to the beach of your childhood, its tender scent. Know, the body calls to itself, what you know, coaxing itself back, not with threats now, but with gladness, making the space wide enough to want to enter. When your father said to you that everything you did was very, very good, except for what was horrid, did you believe him? What was it that made you want to abandon, oh, arms open, splayed open, everything? The self carries with it pockets of sky, extravagant at nightfall, a reminder of what wants to let go. And the body, remembering what it does not want to know, nevertheless calls itself back, away from the other voices, to the little space, hardly a space at all, the little hard nodule of silence, that stone in the soil. So I think actually what I'd like to do is the first prompt, and again, I wasn't really expecting to do this, but I think I'm being called to do this, is to I'm going to give you the prompt, then I'm going to give you a little meditation and see how it goes. But my invitation to you is to find a place in yourself that feels tight, that feels constricted, that's like boxes within boxes. And I want you just to gently locate that if you can, and breathe into it. It doesn't need to be the most tight place. Just do what feels right to you now. It could be very small, it could be something just from today, it could be something bigger. Just find a place of tightness within yourself. Be here in a moment. I want you just to invite you to just breathe into it. Just notice it and bring some breath, some healing breath into that tightness. And now I invite you to go to a pen and paper if you want to write on your computer. And my invitation to you is to write, just see if you can find any way to both first imagine that tightness, describe the tightness, and then see if there's some way that you can release it through poetry, through images. What's the image of the tightness? And then what's a place where it can open up and release a little bit? And I'm going to give you some words to work with because that makes the creative process a little bit more playful and gets you out of the same rut so you can try something different. Okay, so some words to work with are blossom, box, threat, pocket, gladness, and voice. And I'll put those in the chat. Use all of the words if you can, use none of the words if you want, use some of them. Again, describe that tightness and then see if you can have an image of some opening. I'd love to hear how that was for you. Maybe put in the chat how that went, and then we can discuss it more in a little bit. But I wanted to give that prompt because I do really feel like when we talk about this topic, there's so much anxiety and despair, and I'm thinking like, how can we have hope? And I think that it's so important to be able to locate that place within ourselves and to recognize also the ways in which change is possible, right? If we can heal individually, then we believe in the capacity for change. We believe in the capacity to work towards something that is regenerative, that is healing. And if we don't believe in that, if our body doesn't believe in that, then it's going to be really hard to find solutions that are actually positive solutions. I think we're in this cycle in our human history where we're putting negativity against negativity, and we think that's going to cause, the positive solution. But violence fighting violence is going to cause more violence. And so we have to believe in ourselves. We have to feel in our bodies the possibility for other kinds of change. And for me, so much of writing is about writing into, feeling into, believing into other possibilities. So I thought maybe I would just read another poem. It's called On the Shortest Day of the Year. And my um, kind of private subtitle for the poem is It's Against Despair. And I thought it would be appropriate maybe to read this poem Against Despair in this conversation. So, on the shortest day of the year, even if there is only the smallest door made of stone with no handle, bend low, put all your weight into it. It opens onto the wide expanse of where you've never been, groundless, blue, and untranslatable. And there, just at the edge of your vision, a single purple flower rooting down. So in this poem, I wrote the poem and then I went back and I looked at the imagery and I was like, well, if it's really hard to open a door, wouldn't the door be really, really big and really, really heavy? Why would you need to put all your weight into like the tiny little door? But I trusted the imagery of the poem. So I was like, well, does that make sense or not? And I think that that tightness, it's, we have the image of it's harder for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get into heaven, right? Is that, but like the miracle of fitting through the camel fitting through the eye of a needle, right? That we take something that seems big, right? Like, oh, this is so hard, but there's this little opening. And the miracle is we need to find the way with all of our energy to almost go into light form, to be able to open something out in some different medium. We enter a different realm of possibility where we can fit through that tiny doorway into something that's so expansive. So if we can feel that possibility in our body and let the imagery of our own writing guide us, because there's wisdom there. So I just want to read some of your chats. Yeah, Lottie, I totally agree. It's totally different to write after a little bit of vision. And you said it's interesting to start with some stillness and breath. And then the images that came to me were weird and wonderful. Catherine, you say tightness at the base of my neck. It was birthed out of overindulgence. It's anchored my liver by a silver thread. Beautiful. Try to see what follows. Needs some help. It hurts. Bother. No bother. Beautiful. I'm just not going to read all of it because it became very personal yet also positive. If I take care of myself, I can take care of others. Imagery for your healing journey, Wendy says. Kathy, took me back to my former work in schools and how I used to startle so easily in my little windowless often, and how my shoulders and upper back held my distress for myself and the children I worked with. Yeah. So again, I think that this question of how can we as individuals make a difference, it is rooted partly in our body and in believing in and feeling in the possibility of regeneration. So I want to read maybe another poem. This one is called March. It's a very March day here. Pretty gray. March. All winter we walked on the fallen sky, walked on clouds until we fell thigh deep to earth. Now the clouds are running down the side of the mountain in small hidden rivers. What in you needs melting? What do you do with your anger and your hope? All night, down the side of the mountain, waters run together where we cannot see. Underneath, the earth is awakening. Once more, the tips of bare branches put out new buds. Again, they clasp their small palms together in prayer. And so I think we really can learn from the natural world, the images of the natural world. The Robin Wall Kimmerer, in her wonderful book Braiding Sweetgrass, talks about the reciprocal relationship between the human world and the natural world. We live in a culture that separates us. But the natural world and the human world, as humans, they inter-are, just as we talk about mind and body, but mind and body inter-are. We can't cut them apart. Um, and so to think about how can we learn from the landscape around us? It teaches us that, the clouds that we see up above us, the rain or the snow falls down and then we walk on it. It teaches us that intermingling, the interbeing of all things. And of course, I'm also a student of Thich Nhat Hanh, who talks so much about interbeing. He says, if you drink your cup of tea, you're drinking the clouds, and that partly inspired this poem, March. Jackie says, it was very inspiring. Heard fox and not box, but was able to write about the natural world based on memory. I actually love it when people mishear what I say, because I feel like there's an amazing synergy and people hear what they're meant to hear. So maybe like a fox was wanting to come through for you, Jackie, and that was really the image that wanted to come through. So I always tell people, don't worry about like hearing perfectly. It can be a game of almost like telephone, where you're going to hear what you're meant to hear. Veshma, beautiful, entangles tight, I'm stuck, it seems. Yearning for the space of dreams, to move away from the voices loud, find solace in a peaceful shroud. I wish to bloom like flowers do and fly away like birds that flew. Nature's breath, I find my cheer. My heart sings free when nature's near. Beautiful. And I love what different people do with the prompts, the different kinds of poems you write. And did you notice also that just a few minutes you can write so much with this kind of combination? Okay. I want to read two short poems that are in part about writing and about the creative practice. And maybe then give you a little bit more time to write and then come into some more conversation, and maybe some next steps for ways that you can take what you're doing here to move beyond the session. Okay, so just two more really short poems and another little writing prompt. My throat is a fire, is a line of birds waiting to rise up from still water. Is the earth dark and heavy with spring rain? Is the air, as the mist lifts, sighing, ready to let go? And again, I think that we can find creative inspiration by looking at the natural world around us, and especially at this time, looking to the seasons. How does the earth that's frozen thaw? How does it allow new life to emerge again? So this, and I want to say one more thing. When we take action, it's actually healthy for our body. So that fight, flight, or freeze response is kind of built into our nervous system as a trauma response, right? We either run away, we fight it, or we just act dead, we freeze, we protect ourselves by like going dead. And I think that when we're talking about the climate crisis, the environmental crisis, that's how a lot of people want to act, right? We either run away from it, we're like, or we go into combative mode. But if you're fighting, your energy is like really tight, and we're seeing around the world that violence that meets violence does not have good outcomes for anybody. And we can't afford that anymore. Well, we could never afford it, but we really can't afford it now. And then the freeze, when we freeze, everything it feels so bad to freeze. So to notice those responses and instead to develop the capacity, and this is where I think meditation, yoga practices are so helpful. We learn to breathe through difficult things. We learn to come out of that first reaction into a more mindful response. We learn to move through things, to work with challenges, and then to really be conscious of, how do I want to respond? How can I keep moving? How can I keep active? How can I keep positive? And learn from around me, like see all the ways in which the flowers here are still coming up. The trees are putting out their buds. How can I participate in that and use the creative process to be part of that, to be a practice of creative, positive energy and participation, which doesn't mean I don't want to look at the difficult things. It means I want to look at those things. I want to incorporate them, but mindfully, so they become compost for new growth. Because you don't want to like push them away. Again, that's like the fight, flight, freeze, but instead to incorporate it, because we want to be grounded in reality. So this is another short poem, and it's called Invocation. Invocation. Sleep like a golden rain fall through me. Hard earth that resists the shovel's metal blade. Yield. Buried seed. Grow plump. Split. Push out your extravagant green tendril, reaching for the sun. So my invitation to you is to write a poem. You can call it Invocation if you want, and address yourself and make it a prayer for yourself, for your own creative life, for your own agency, your own action, your own engagement. And if you want to use a few words, I'll give you a few words. Rain, blade, extravagant, and tendril. And I'll put those in the chat. So an invocation, a prayer for your own creative life. Mute myself. Okay, so I'm actually going to lead you. I know I just gave this, maybe you started writing, but I actually want to just, if you don't mind, lead you in a short meditation again, and then we'll come back to it. So if you can, I know this might feel weird, and you can mute me and keep writing if you want, but I invite you actually just to see what happens if you come into meditation. Let it go. Imagine a channel through you, light moving through you from your crown down through your core. That channel of breath is also a channel of light. It can also be a channel of healing, cleansing water. A spring rain. You can make that channel a little wider, the flow a little easier. Stay with the breath as it comes in and out. I'm going to read the poem again. Invocation. Sleep, like a golden rain, fall through me. Hard earth that resists the shovel's metal blade, yield. Buried seed, grow plump, split. Push out your extravagant green tendril, reaching for the sun. And I invite you to write. Stay connected to that channel. See what wants to come through you. So how was that? What did you discover? What did you write? Feel free to put it in the chat. Do you have any questions? Anything you want to share? Catherine, you wrote, change is the pattern, life's only recurrent map. I'm found on her path. Beautiful. Beautiful. Ruth, water, light, mingle in an extravagance of possibility. The voice need not be loud, but make it clear, make it count. In a world where words are weaponized, make the story one of healing, of compassion, of possibility. If a blade of grass can split concrete, if drops of rain can wear down stone, if the tendrils of a vine can weave a cover over broken metal, then the quiet voice of a story can undam a river and quench a fire. Yes, and it's so beautiful because these aren't just metaphors, right? They're actual examples. I love that. Yes, beautiful. So, I think maybe what I'll do is I'll just share a little bit more, share some ideas and some resources, and then open up some breakout rooms so you can discuss with one another, and then we'll come back here at the end. So maybe what I'll do is I will read two or three more poems, and then read a little bit from the afterword of my book, and then talk about building some bridges between our poetry and other forms of action and connection. And then we'll come together, talk as a group, and then go into breakout rooms. So, August. So this poem, again, it can be hard to hear poems at first, but this poem is about middle age. It's about miscarriage in my early 40s. And it's about looking back with some nostalgia, but also really being present for all the complexity of our lives and of this moment. So, August. For 6 years, we took no precaution, and my body made no baby. Nor did we plot to create another life, content to let nature do what it would, which was this morning bring bright red blood in the toilet, so bright and sudden in its burst it seemed almost alive, and then a little plop. Child we will never have, end of something. In the course I'm taking, we are taught happiness is found in the deep I, in the consciousness of consciousness. But I resist. I want blood and bone. When I wrote this poem, I had 2 kids already. Our son in my arms, our daughter's laugh, her wonder and unapologetic tears. I want relationship, the grass that grows no place but the earth, this earth, the stubbly green bare beneath our bare feet when we ran on the lawn, the rich smell of dirt, the pebbles, the grit, those summers when we were all so much younger and didn't know. Such gifts. As now, our children almost grown, we hardly know this is as close to heaven as we can come. So close to so many changes, the ice even now melting at the poles. And see, these tiny red tomatoes at the ends of plants. little globes of sun, offerings we pick and eat whole. Power. I turn the questions over and over when I cannot sleep, when my mind will not turn off. The waters of the ocean creep up the shore, the temperature slides up half a degree and then more. The high glacial shelf in the Arctic breaks off. What is it that I want? At my daughter's camp at night when it's hot in the dark, the girls take off their clothes at the docks at the lip of the lake for special swimming. I want to take off my clothes for special lighting in a dark that is soft, in the water that will hold me, my body still a girl's, with the whole world before me, opening in song. The words not yet written on the page. Oh, letter by letter, as the oil drop by drop is coaxed from the earth, is held together, broken apart, taken into the guts of fish, their cells, our mouths, our milk. Dare we ask for what we really want? And I'll read the last poem in the book. You who were so quiet, didn't you know there was a symphony inside you? Didn't you know you were composing? The trumpets are so glad, and the French horn in its great deep beckoning resounds. Didn't you hear the calling? From your stillness, as if you had looked out over calm waters to see the geese rise up in unison in front of the setting sun. Such a squall of color, and your whole being given to the one who rests in the great up-flapping, the geese mounting higher and higher into the evening, growing brighter and louder still. So my hope is that these poems inspire you and that you can find in your close attention that the best teacher, I think, for us as poets is the world around us. That if we can pay attention to that world and pay attention to our responses to that world and be precise, that will guide our poetry. And ask questions as much as find answers. In the questions, that's really where the richness is. And then be, open up to that creative energy that you have within you. So I want to just read a little bit from the postscript. And I say, in contemporary America, where so much is siloed and segregated, there is sometimes a misconception that this inner work of self-encounter is solitary, purely personal. But I believe that the inner leads us to the outer, and the outer to the inner, and then back out again. And so I say later, my wish is that these poems invite greater awareness, expression, and engagement on every level. I believe we need many different kinds of action, and I hope this book helps build bridges. So again, in that light, what I want to do is I want to share a few resources for ways to get involved, so that your writing is one form of engagement, but also you can find other ways to be involved in making positive action around the environment and the climate crisis, and staying connected, feeling like a point of connection, a point of excitement, a point of regeneration, not just despair. So let me just, sorry, I thought I had this link up, but let me get it here. So this is a list that I put together with some ideas. I'm going to put it in the chat. I can also send this out in an email, a follow-up email. Project Regeneration that I talked about before is a great resource for getting involved. And I have more on my website and my free resources on my website. But I think it might be nice to, take a moment now and see if there are ways that you can connect your own care for the natural world, your own care for the poetic voice, your own creative energy, and ways to bring them together in kind of building bridges between different forms of action and activism and positive growth and creativity. So does anyone want to share anything in the chat? Any resources? I also want to share Climate Action Now is an app, especially for people in the US. It's just a little app on your phone, and in like 2 minutes a day, you can take action, reach out to corporations that have bad environmental practices, reach out to the Environmental Protection Agency, reach out to politicians, and really use your voice to send letters to make a difference. So I highly recommend that also as a way to get involved. Does anyone have any questions? Do you want to unmute yourself if you do? And I also want to put in the chat, if you're interested in getting my book, I would be so honored. And I'm going to put that in the chat as well, where you can order I Say the Sky. Thank you, Reshma, for this self-care practices and healing through nature. That sounds great. And to use all the channels, as you say, some activism is personal. I think that's right. I think that it's like really important to think about all the different levels and to be engaged in as many levels as you can, you know, so that yes, we need to take care of our bodies. Yes, we want to be outside. Yes, we want to, like, there's not a hierarchy, but the more that we can do across different levels, the better. Again, it feels like it's really important to have these conversations, and also to realize that different people enjoy doing different things, but that we can also just do like little tap in different ways across different levels. And I wonder also maybe what we could do is, Lottie, I don't know if you're able to just take a like recording of what's the resources in the chat, and then we can send them out as a follow-up with the recording after the session.
Yep, I'll make a note of all of those and send those out with everyone as well.
Thank you so much. And I guess I just want to say also, if you're interested in this book, it does come with, if you buy it, you can get 7 days of free meditation and writing recordings, a little bit like what we did here. If you just go to my website onto the I Say the Sky book page, if you just put in the order number, then you will get those 7 days of meditation and writing recordings that lead you through a really pretty deep spiritual journey of self-awareness and of creativity. Okay. Thank you, Kathy, for your words about the book and the practice. What I think I'll do, since I'm not seeing a lot of questions in the chat, is I think I'll open up some breakout rooms, or Lottie will open out some breakout rooms so you can connect with one another. What I recommend doing in the breakout rooms is introducing yourselves, say where you are, what brings you here. If you would like to share one of your pieces of writing that you wrote in this session, I would encourage you to share it. And what I always recommend, especially in groups like this, is to, this is how we share in a Dharma sharing, we listen attentively, and then instead of giving feedback, we thank the other person. We don't need to say, I love this line or I love this line, just listen and thank them. Just thank you. Because if you're listening to come up with a response, your listening isn't going to be as deep. So then I also encourage you to share with one another questions that you have, resources that you have, and then we'll come back together and check in and share other resources and if there are other questions. So great. Well, I would love to hear from you and learn, you know, how is the conversation? Do you have conversations? Do you have questions? Do you have resources to share? Feel free just to unmute yourself. Anyone want to report back from your group? A chat, a talk, a chirp, a smile, poem shared during the breakout room. Thank you, Reshma. Beautiful.
I enjoyed our participants very much, and we talked mostly about nature.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that. And I guess, I just encourage you all as poets and, nature lovers to really read the natural world and put those images from the natural world into your poems. Be close observers. Listen, look, feel, taste, smell. Try to use all of your senses. Yeah, and keep
Uh,
that alive. Yeah, was someone else going to say something?
Nadia, how can I get back the link to buying your book? It was in the chat.
Thank you. Let me go find that. I will put that in again.
Because I'll lose it, won't I, once the Zoom ends?
Yes, but Lottie, we can send out.
I will make sure to email the link to everyone as well. But yeah, feel free
Yeah.
to click it
Yes.
and bookmark it somewhere so that we're all ready to buy it. Yeah.
It's,
And you can always.
it's available on Amazon, I noticed.
It is, yes.
Good.
And you can always reach out to me through my website. So it's Nadia Colburn.
Yeah.
And if you go to my website, you can see there's a book page. So if you order it, just go to that book page and then you
Yeah.
can put in the order number and then you'll automatically get those 7-day meditation and writing prompts. If you have any questions, you can email me at nadia@nadiacolburn.com. There's also a contact sheet on my website, so you can email me that way.
Will
Yeah.
they be different from the original 5 days that you did some weeks ago with the
Yes,
poems by?
the ones that come with the book are all new and they're all prompts
Okay, good.
taken from
Because
the book. Yeah.
they were really good poems, the ones by Rumi, and
Yeah.
that
Well,
was
I
very.
don't know. I mean, they're from my book, so I can't tell you that they're going to be as good as the Rumi poems, but I think
Okay.
people have found that they really enjoy. Actually, people have told me that they really enjoy the prompts from the book. It really takes you on a journey and through those 7 days.
Yeah,
So,
good.
yeah,
Yeah,
I hope you'll.
forward to that. I look forward to that because I enjoyed those 5 days.
I'm so
Um,
glad. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Catherine, for saying I Scale the Sky is a wonderful book. Um, and I hope, again, I hope I have been so inspired by other poets. And my hope is that my poetry will inspire you to write your poetry and to nurture your own creative voice and your own creative engagement and your own activism, your own enjoyment and participation in the natural world, in your own body as part of the natural world, all of those things. So thank you so much for taking this time with me. I know it must be somewhat late there in the UK. And again, thank you.
I'm going to watch a program now about Abraham Lincoln that's being
Oh,
shown on PBS. It's fascinating.
yes.
Yes, so much I didn't know about him.
I'm
Yeah.
sure much I don't know too. Well, thank you all. I'm so glad that finding that creative voice really helped, Reshma. Um, thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Lottie. Yes, please support Clifftop, all the wonderful work that you do at Clifftop. Thank you, and making these, programs available for people who need them, who otherwise, maybe couldn't afford. So important. So thank you so much. Please stay connected. We'll send out the recording, we'll send out links. You can reach out to me. I'll put my email address. Again, I would love to share my book with you. I would love to share my teachings. I have an upcoming class, Align Your Story. If you're not on my email list, you can learn more about that on my website. I'm actually making the first module of that available for everyone for free this coming weekend. So if you want to know about that, you can also email me, get on my email list, and you'll learn about that. So really, really great to be with you. Don't hesitate to reach out to me, through my website or just through my email if you have any other questions, and keep writing.